They dragged her into a room with no windows, no cameras that anyone outside would ever see, and no name on the door. This was a place that officially did not exist, run by men who answered to no one. And yet somehow, in the middle of a supposed CIA black site, a lone freelance journalist named Russell Plum was standing outside with a camera and a theory that would blow the entire operation wide open. Season 4 of Reacher is not just bringing back the brutal fights fans love. It is dragging viewers into a conspiracy so deep that even the agency running the black site might not be who they claim to be. The scene starts with a threat, plain and simple. A man is dragged out of frame, and the woman left behind is told flatly that if she wants answers, she is going to give them first. This is not a friendly conversation. This is an interrogation designed to break someone, and the question they keep circling back to is about a drive, a small piece of hardware handed off on a train by someone named Anna Merrick. That single object becomes the center of everything. Whoever wants it badly enough to run an unmarked black site and torture people for it is protecting something they cannot afford to have exposed. And the fact that Reacher and his allies are the ones caught in the middle tells us this season is not dealing with small-time criminals. This is an operation with resources, with soundproof rooms, with men who show up fast once a phone call goes out. When the woman finally screams under pressure and the interrogator smiles and says that's better, it sets the tone for how far these people are willing to go. There is no due process here. There is no oversight. Just a room, a chair, and someone determined to get what they want no matter the cost. What makes this moment so tense is the silence that follows. One character notes it felt like an all-out brawl just happened inside, and another is nothing. That kind of silence in a Reacher story never means peace. It means something has shifted, and not necessarily in favor of the people running the interrogation. Sure enough, the group starts moving, fighting their way out through pure grit, catching the guards off guard. Realizing partway through that these captors, confident as they seemed, did not even think they needed their guns nearby. That single detail says everything about how untouchable this organization believed itself to be. They thought no one could reach them, escape them, or expose them. They were wrong. As the group scrambles for weapons, cuffs, wallets, anything left behind in the chaos, the tension keeps climbing because everyone in that room knows backup is coming. A phone rings. Someone says company will be here soon. And just like that, the countdown begins. This is where Reacher Season 4 shows its hand early. This is not about winning one fight. It is about surviving long enough to make it out before reinforcements arrive and turn a tense escape into a bloodbath. Every second matters. Every locked door matters. And every decision from here on determines whether they get out alive or get dragged right back into that windowless room. The scramble to escape becomes the true test of who these characters are. Because getting out of a locked room is one thing, but making it through a hallway crawling with armed men who now know their prisoners are loose is an entirely different fight. Every step forward comes with the risk of running straight into someone waiting around the next corner. And the group has to move fast without knowing the layout, without knowing how many guards are stationed between them and the exit, and without knowing if the people chasing them have already called for outside reinforcements. That call did happen. Someone mentioned a phone, and the moment a phone rings inside a black site that is not supposed to exist, it means the countdown to real danger has already started. More than one guy is coming, someone says, and in a story like this, that single sentence is enough to make the stakes feel unbearable, because it is no longer just about fighting through the men already inside. It becomes a race against time before a second wave arrives with better weapons, better numbers, and orders to make sure nobody walks out of that building alive to tell the story. The tension only builds when the group realizes something strange. The guards inside did not even have their guns on them. They were so confident in their control over the situation, so certain that nobody could fight their way out of a black site designed to hold people against their will, that they left their weapons locked away instead of keeping them close. That single detail says everything about how untouchable this organization believed itself to be. and it becomes the crack in their armor that the group exploits. They scavenge what they can, while it's left on a table in another room. Cuffs that turn out to be long enough to work with. Every small object becomes a tool for survival, and every second spent gathering supplies is a second closer to the moment reinforcements walk through the door and turn a tense escape into an all-out war. As they move deeper into the building, trying to find any way out, the pressure never lets up. A voicemail plays somewhere in the background. A small detail that reminds everyone watching that outside forces are already looped into what's happening, and that whoever's monitoring the situation from a distance is running out of patience. Time is the enemy here, more than any single guard or locked door. The group pushes forward through tight spaces, someone finding themselves stuck trying to squeeze through a narrow gap while the others scream for them to keep moving. Because standing still is not an option anymore. Every hallway could be the one with a guard waiting on the other side. Every door could be the one that leads to a dead end instead of freedom. And through all of it, the sense that they are being hunted never fades, because this is not a group of criminals running from police. This is a group of ordinary people who stumbled into something far bigger than themselves. Something involving a hidden drive, a woman named Anna Merrick, and an operation willing to torture and kill to protect its secrets. When they finally reach a door leading outside, the relief is short-lived because someone spots movement in the alley. There are more of them out there. The chase is not over just because they made it past the walls of the building. If anything, being outside makes things more dangerous because now they are exposed, vulnerable, running through unfamiliar streets with armed men closing in from multiple directions. This is the moment a car pulls up and a stranger tells them to get in, insisting he is not with the CIA, that his man has eyes on the situation, that he can get them out. In a story built on trust being a weapon used against people, a stranger offering help in the middle of a life-or-death chase is either the answer to their prayers or another trap waiting to spring. The group has no time to weigh the odds carefully. They have seconds to decide whether trusting an unknown man in a car is safer than staying on foot with armed pursuers closing the distance. This is where Reacher Season 4 draws its audience in the deepest, because it is not just physical danger driving the tension. It is the uncertainty of who can be trusted, who is really working against them, and who might be playing a longer game that nobody in that car fully understands yet. The stranger identifies himself as Russell Plum, a freelance journalist who claims he has been watching that building for weeks, convinced it was a CIA black site long before anyone else caught on. He says he saw them being carried in, first on a gurney, then hours later under guard, and that watching that scene unfold was enough evidence to confirm his suspicions. He did not come to save them out of pure heroism. He came because he wants the story. He wants to expose whatever is happening inside that building, to blow the lid off an operation hidden from public view, and he sees this group as his way in. That motivation changes everything about how the audience should read this rescue. Is Russell Plum truly on their side, or is he simply using them as a means to build his story, willing to put himself and everyone in that car at risk chasing a headline instead of chasing safety? As gunfire erupts around the car and the chase intensifies, the group is forced to trust a man they just met. A man whose only proof of good intentions is a claim about journalism and a promise that he is not one of the people who held them captive. Season 4 is setting up a much larger conspiracy here. Something involving hidden intelligence operations, secret prisoners, and now an outsider determined to drag the truth into the light no matter who gets hurt along the way. The question hanging over everything as this section closes is simple but heavy. Can they trust Russell Plum, or has escaping one dangerous situation only pulled them straight into another one? This time with a man whose loyalty lies with his story rather than with their survival. Once the car speeds away from the black site, the story shifts into a different kind of tension. One built less on physical escape and more on the uncertainty of who Russell Plum really is and what his sudden appearance means for everything that comes next. He drives with the confidence of someone who has done dangerous things before, weaving through streets while bullets and chaos fade behind them. but his calm does not put anyone at ease. If anything, it raises more questions. A freelance journalist does not simply stake out a black site for weeks on a hunch and then charge in during an active firefight to pull strangers out. That kind of commitment suggests either an extraordinary level of dedication to a story or something deeper. Some personal stake in exposing what that building was hiding that goes beyond professional curiosity. As the adrenaline starts to fade and the group has a moment to catch their breath, the questions start piling up. Who exactly is Russell Plum working for? Is he truly independent, chasing a story purely for the sake of the truth? Or is there an editor, a publication, maybe even another agency pulling strings behind him, feeding him information about the black site that an ordinary journalist would never have access to? His claim of watching the building for weeks implies surveillance skills and resources that go beyond a typical reporter's toolkit. And in a story built around hidden operations and buried secrets, nothing about that adds up cleanly. The group has just escaped one group of people willing to lie, manipulate, and hurt others to protect a secret. And now they are sitting in a car with a stranger who admits outright that his goal is a story, not their safety. That admission alone should terrify them because it means the moment his story is secured, there is no guarantee he continues to prioritize keeping them alive or protected. Meanwhile, the drive given to them by Anna Merrick on a train becomes an even heavier weight hanging over every decision made in this section. It was never explained in full what exactly is on that drive, only that it was important enough to justify torture, important enough to justify locking people in a black site with no name and no official existence. As they regroup with Russell Plum, the pressure to figure out what that drive actually contains becomes urgent, because whoever wants it back is not going to stop searching just because their prisoners slipped away. If anything, losing control of the situation makes the people running that black site more dangerous, more desperate, and far more likely to escalate their methods to recover both the drive and the people who now know too much about what happened inside those walls. Season 4 uses this section to slow the pace just enough to let paranoia creep in, replacing the immediate physical danger of gunfire and chase scenes with something quieter and arguably scarier. The fear of not knowing who around you can be trusted. Reacher, ever the strategist even in the aftermath of torture and a violent escape, starts piecing together what Russell Plum's involvement might mean for the bigger picture. If a journalist was able to track this black site for weeks without getting caught, that raises serious concerns about how careless or overconfident the operation running it truly was. Or worse, whether someone on the inside wanted this story to leak, feeding information to Plum deliberately to expose the operation from within. That possibility opens an entirely new thread for the season, hinting that the black site itself may be caught in the middle of a larger power struggle. One where different factions inside the same shadowy world are working against each other, using outsiders like Plum as pawns without his full knowledge. As the group presses him for answers, his responses remain frustratingly vague, sticking to the story of pure journalistic instinct. But small inconsistencies start to surface, tiny details in how he phrases things, how specific certain facts are compared to how vague others remain, suggesting he knows more than he is willing to share right away. This tension between wanting to trust the man who just saved their lives and needing to stay guarded against the possibility that he is manipulating them for his own purposes becomes the emotional core of this section. It forces the group and the audience watching to sit with discomfort instead of relief, because surviving the black site was never going to be the end of the danger. It was only the beginning of a much larger unraveling, one where trust is a currency nobody can afford to spend carelessly. As the section closes, tension builds toward a moment where the group must decide how much to reveal to Russell Plum about the drive, about Anna Merrick, and about what they suspect the black site was truly protecting. Reveal too much, and they risk handing a journalist explosive information he might publish without fully understanding the danger it puts everyone in. Reveal too little, and they risk losing an ally who clearly has resources, connections, and a genuine desire to expose corruption that could prove useful in the fight still ahead. Every choice from here carries weight. Every conversation becomes a careful negotiation between survival and secrecy, setting the stage for a season that promises to dig even deeper into conspiracy, betrayal, and the terrifying realization that the black site might only be the first thread in a much larger web waiting to be pulled apart. As the group settles somewhere safer, if anywhere can truly be called safe after what they just survived. The conversation with Russell Plum finally reaches the point where secrets have to be traded, even if reluctantly. Reacher, never one to trust blindly, starts asking pointed questions, testing Plum's story piece by piece, watching for cracks in his answers the same way he would size up an opponent before a fight. Plum insists again that his interest began purely with surveillance, that he noticed unusual activity around the building weeks earlier. Unmarked vehicles arriving at odd hours, men who moved and dressed like operators rather than office workers, patterns that any trained observer would recognize as something far outside the ordinary. He claims that once he saw them being carried in, first unconscious on a gurney and later under guard, his suspicion turned into certainty, and the pull to expose it became too strong to ignore. It is a compelling story, but Season 4 is not interested in letting the audience settle comfortably into trusting him just yet. Small details keep nagging at the edges of the conversation. The kind of specificity in his knowledge that a person watching from a distance for a few weeks should not reasonably have references to internal code names. Offhand comments about how the site operates that suggest either an extraordinary level of investigative skill or access to a source deep inside the operation itself. This is where the show starts planting seeds for what could be one of the season's biggest twists. The idea that Russell Plum might not simply be a journalist who got lucky, but someone deliberately positioned to intercept this exact situation, whether he fully understands that role or not. As the group weighs how much to share, the drive given to them by Anna Merrick becomes the center of a quiet standoff. Sharing what little they know about it with Plum could accelerate his ability to expose the black site publicly, using the power of the press to do what physical force and evasion alone cannot, dragging the operation into daylight where it can no longer hide behind secrecy and denial. But there is real danger in that path too, because publishing the wrong information at the wrong time could tip off the people running the black site before the group has any real leverage or protection, turning a fragile advantage into a fatal mistake. Reacher's instinct, built from years of operating in situations where information is currency and trust is earned rather than given, is to hold back just enough to test Plum's intentions with partial truths before committing to full transparency. This section leans into that careful, tense negotiation, showing a side of the story that is less about physical combat and more about the mental chess game required to survive an enemy that operates through influence, secrecy, and control rather than open violence. Meanwhile, the specter of the black site looms over every decision because the people running it are not simply going to accept the loss of their prisoners and move on. Season 4 makes clear through small but pointed details that this organization has reach, resources, and the kind of operational discipline that suggests government-level backing or something disturbingly close to it. The mention of a call being made, of company arriving soon, was not an empty threat. It was a demonstration of how quickly this group can mobilize, how deeply embedded their surveillance and response capabilities are. And that alone should terrify anyone who thinks a single successful escape means the danger has passed. As Plum continues pressing for more information, promising that exposing this story could protect the group by making them too high profile to quietly eliminate without consequence, an uncomfortable truth settles over the conversation. Visibility can be both a shield and a target. The more public this becomes, the harder it is for the black site's operators to simply erase everyone involved without drawing unwanted attention. But it also means painting a massive target on their backs, ensuring that whoever is protecting this operation from the shadows now has every incentive to silence them permanently before the story breaks. This section captures that razor's edge perfectly, showing characters forced to gamble with incomplete information, deciding whether trusting a stranger with an agenda of his own is a calculated risk worth taking or a reckless leap that could unravel everything they have fought to survive. By the end of this section, the group reaches a fragile, uneasy alliance with Russell Plum, agreeing to